after recording my last video, I realized it was chillier even than I thought. So I decided to put a jacket on. Anyway, I wanted to talk about Lore 24. Now, last year, there was Dungeon 23. And I thought it was kind of a neat little exercise. I will admit, I fell off. After September, things kind of went a little bit sideways for me. And some good, some really bad. And the last part of 2023 was a lot. And so I didn't finish with Dungeon 23. I got sidetracked and didn't get back to it. And frankly, I think I got out of it what I was going to get out of it. So anyway, I fast forward to the beginning of 2024 and I start seeing people talking about Lore 24. And I like this idea. I feel like it fits me a little better. So I'm going to try it, and I'm going to try it again this year. We'll see if I make it, or we'll see if September is another start to a completely insane last quarter of the year. Anyway, what do I have for Lore 24? This is each day writing a little bit of lore for my setting. Now, I decided to go with, as I typically do when I think about stuff like that, with Conquest of the Sphere. Conquest of the Sphere. I can use my words today. That is a setting that I have been working on, and I have talked about in previous videos, for a really long time. Really since I was a teenager. Pieces even from my childhood kind of came together and coalesced into this thing. But I would say that I've really been working on it seriously since my late teens or early 20s. So quite a while back. And in the meantime, in the last certainly 8 to 10 years, I have written several stories. I have been working for years now on my first novel, which will be set in here. And I figure, why not? Let's do Lore 24 for Conquest of the Sphere. Each day I will write a little piece of lore and see where it goes from there. And early on, I figured I would simply expand on a few things that I had mentioned, or what have you. I have a sort of encyclopedia of Conquest of the Sphere that I am working on, that I fill out whenever I mention something or come up with something. I'll put in a little entry for that. Some of them are simply a sentence, so I've gone and picked some of those to expand upon. As I go on across the year, I may find some other things, but in the meantime, what do I have? Day 1, aca. This grain is one of the most common in the making of bread. See, not only do I have to read this on screen, but I have to read my own handwriting, which is not easy. Though some is grown within the realms dominated and affiliated with Graves. Graves is a city that a lot of action in my stories either takes place in or takes place around. It's a very important city and power in the overall region where much of what I've written so far takes place. The most productive lands for Akka are under the sway of the antagonistic Dan. Dan is a really nasty civilization. They're kind of, how did I put it? They were sort of a mix of the antebellum American South with Cold War era Eastern Bloc, and there's something else in there that, but they're real nasty characters, and I've set them up as if there's a villain, and I don't believe that this is a setting that I try to have be relatively realistic, relatively so. So there aren't good guys and bad guys, there's just a bunch of guys. But Don is a pretty nasty culture, and they are the closest thing I think I have to an obvious villain. But even within that, that's not necessarily everybody who's there. It's just as a state, they're quite nasty. Okay, anyway, in spite of there being very little official contact between the two states, a robust trade in the grain exists. This can cause some official frustration, especially with farmers in Graves' sphere of influence, due to Gervais's long tradition of outlawing chattel and generational slavery, because that's bad, but Don's embrace thereof. Caravans carrying the grain can face difficulties from officials and often work bribes into the cost of business. If some other source of aka could be discovered, some region where it grows better, it might prove quite lucrative. Let's see. In its raw state, aka can be very flammable and is subject to mold. For transportation, it is processed into a fine flour and then packed into bricks, which are then wrapped in cloth made from the husks of the aka plant. So that's my first entry. I'm just going to read these entries if you're interested. You know, there it is. And I'll just do my first week here. So, Boj, a member of a legendary band of heroes known as the 12. Boj was also father of the twins, the founders of Gervais, and the Church of the Twins. Though many of the things I'll mention, especially anything revolving around history or religion, these are what is believed by many people on a day-to-day basis. So, like the twins are the founders of Gervais and of the Church of the Twins. Well, probably they did not found the Church of the Twins. That's probably founded sometime later by people who came after them, but attuned or, you know, attributed the origin of the church to the twins. Anyway, Boj, he was born beyond the Bone Mountains, and ran with the Yarrow as a boy. The Yarrow are another sort of species that exists on this planet, though typically they are somewhat separated on where they live. Both groups know of each other, but they are typically separated for a bunch of reasons that go back in history. Anyway, following a series of mystical adventures, he made his way to the lands of the Una. That is my human analogy, where he met his lover, Achek, who would join him when the 12 were formed. And the 12 is a sort of mythological group, kind of like Monkey and his friends from that myth, but also maybe a little bit like the Argonauts, that kind of thing. Let's see. While on a voyage to Drumhavi, across the Lake of Three Bloods, Achek gave birth to the twins. Boj and Achek would die after their companion Tevek the Seer betrayed them to the demon princes of Drumhavi. The twins would escape the demon princes and have their own adventures before founding Gervais. So that is part of a myth cycle that exists in the world. Is there any history to it? Maybe, but it is a myth cycle first and foremost. Let's see. Nasek. Sleek and deadly, these beasts hunt temperate forests. Though no bigger than an Una, their deadly claws and powerful muscles are more than a match for most prey. They also have two retractable fang-like tusks that can inject venom into a victim. The venom causes the circulatory system to grow sluggish, often causing weakness, coma, and death. The furred hide of the Nasek is worn by some as a sign of virility and boldness. Their venom enjoys popularity among certain unsavory types. Nasek tend to hunt in small groups and are ambush predators. A caravan, or a large group of people, is likely safe from in their hunting grounds, but a lone Una or a small band of people could be the target of a Nasek or a group of Nasek if they are hungry. This is especially true in colder weather when other prey may be scarce. So, okay. Let's see. Delikyo, one of the 12, it was known as the Builder. Many constructions have been attributed to Delikyo, including the Great Roads, the Lattice Sea. These are things that may or may not get referenced in some stories. And most famously, the foundations of Gervais itself. Depictions and descriptions of Delikyo vary greatly. making some scholars believe the name was a title or perhaps shared between parent and child. Legend says Delecchio used the bones of the dead night god to make the foundations of Gervais, though none seem to know what the night god was. Day 5, I have Iyaki. These brutal giants are said to haunt the mountains of Eta. Eta is the name that people in Gervais give to the world. It is said that they walk on 2 feet like an Una, but are twice as tall and hulking, with ridged foreheads and small tusks protruding from their lower jaw. It is no wonder that they are popular boogeymen for traders and children. Surprisingly, the people of the old Bone Mountain villages revere the Iyaki, believing them to be sacred beings and protectors of the forests. Day 6, Achek. Some legends say Achek was not born of woman, but spit out from the sea. She certainly had an affinity for water and is often called upon by sailors. She took Boj as a lover, though it is said that her children were not of Boj. They joined the 12, she and Boj, joined the 12 and had many adventures together. 2 conflicting stories tell of Achek's end. In one version, she and Boj were betrayed by Tevek the seer and slain. In another, Achek was killed by her daughter, Alon the Spike. So, with a lot of mythology, it changes from region to region, from sect to sect. There are always variations and mistranslations, etc. Finally, day 7, Fountains of Mashaba. One of the largest bathhouses in Gervais. It's a place near the center of the span. That is a large section that was built up between other communities when several communities became one and became Gervais as a whole city. Anyway, that's another post probably. Let's see, blah, 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 blah. Center of the span makes it easy to access for people from all classes and walks of life, save the very wealthy who have their own secluded bathhouses. The bathhouse, sometimes called Mashabas, just that, is a place for deals and agreements, often used for the most sensitive of meetings, especially where danger is suspected. It is, after all, difficult to smuggle a weapon when you are naked. An old order of clergy maintain the structure and operate it as a business, though it is not officially a church holding. So that's my first week for Lore 24. Again, it's sort of random segments of lore. These are some things that I have written down at one time or other and not explored with much depth. So I wanted to give myself at least a little bit more, maybe a paragraph or so of information on each thing to see where it goes from there. And in some cases, some of them are sparking ideas for further things. For example, I had not written up anything about Achek before, so it was nice to actually write something. Anyway, that's week 1 for Lore 24. I'm going to try to keep this going for the entirety of 2024, but we'll see. Life can be crazy, so last year certainly proved that. We'll see. Until the next time, check out links below. You can check out my Patreon, where I am currently working on putting out the current draft of the novel as it stands. I think I just recently put up chapter 3, so I will be putting out periodically new chapters for that. And I think this is the last major revision. I think once this draft is finished, it will be a matter of going back in, polishing up a few things, perhaps adding a little bit here or there as needed. But for the most part, certainly structurally, I think the novel is now in its close to final form. So anyhow, you can check that out on the Patreon if you'd like to. In the meantime, I'm going to try to warm up because it's crazy cold here and enjoy some hot tea. That's good stuff. Take care.